All right. Yeah, we're doing this live stream thing now, so whatever we say and do up front cannot be edited out. And so that's really challenging. And so we're working on all those logistics. Really appreciate the AV team, their energy and efforts that they've made to just bring that to fruition. That was their own drive and desire. I think they just like doing as much tech as they can, and so they just keep on pushing. And the exciting thing about that is we've had a bunch of people tune in already. We've done some test runs of the live streaming, and several have tuned into that, which is really exciting to be able to see that people are tuned in there. And we have people all over the place that actually watch our messages online as well, which is a pretty awesome thing. And so we're not alone. All right, anyway. So today we're starting a new series called 2020 Vision. Why? Because it's 2020, all right? Makes sense? I've been waiting for this for a long time to do this series. I'm like, oh, this is going to be so great, 2020 Vision, and yeah, it's here. So you excited? As much as the kids going out for kids' church today, is that how it goes? Okay, awesome. We were singing the song, and it talked about lifting your hands. I looked out and like, Jeff had his hands raised, and I think Betty did, and everybody else like, I'm just too tired to do that, man. I can't lift my hands today, and but we're working at that. So here's who we are. Let me just, I want to remind us every week of our mission. Why are we here? Who are we as Milestone Church? We are a church for the community. We're a church for the community that invites others to place their faith in Jesus and fully follow him together. That's who we are. And I'm going to keep reminding us of that because we need to stay focused and stay clear on what our vision really is for our church and why we do what we do. Vision is one of those things where you look at 2020 vision. To have 2020 eyesight is really important. When I take my glasses off, you're all just a blur to me. And when I put them back on, I can see everyone, and that's generally a good thing, to be able to see what's going on, all right? Unless you wake up in the morning like, nah, I don't want to see that yet. But 2020 vision is being able to see clearly what's going on. When I look at our culture, I would say that we need a bit of clarity with what we're looking at. From young to old, there's a lot of clarity that I believe needs to happen. I look at our generation, and I'm not talking about just the millennials or Gen Z. I'm talking about the boomers and all the others in between, that we really are struggling with clarity. Let me help to illustrate that a little bit this morning so that you can grab onto that. I have this board up here that it looks like we're going to play tic-tac-toe. Anybody want to play me tic-tac-toe? No, I didn't think so. Didn't think you'd raise your hand, so I knew I was safe by asking that. Anyway, there are different compartments in life. We're not playing tic-tac-toe. Different compartments in life. We all have compartments, and so I'm listing 9 of them this morning, just for simplicity's sake, because we could go a bit further than that. And in no specific order, I just printed out what I had, and so I'm going to put these up here. We have different compartments, like our spouse is a compartment in our life. It's that this is a segment of my life. My spouse, unless if you work together, but my spouse is not at work, but my spouse is here with me, and my spouse is at this part. Or maybe it's, I don't have a spouse, I'd like to have a spouse, or I'm glad I got rid of my spouse, whatever it might be, but that's a compartment of your life. Another compartment is friends. We like friends most of the time, right? It's a compartment of our life. Another one is kids. Sometimes they take up a huge compartment of our life when you've got all the sports and activities and things at school going on. And you're looking around and you're like, oh man, I'm going to pull my hair out because I have so much going on and these compartments are taking up so much energy. And then you have more compartments, things that you're thinking about, like career. And that's, what job you're going to take and different things. And then you have another one. I'm going to throw this one in the middle here. Church is a compartment, right? Where you're like, okay, I got to fit church in somehow, and I've got my career going on, my spouse and my friends. They're all kind of driving me in different directions, and then you've got your health as well. That's another compartment, and I've got to take care of myself physically there, and the health things. And I've got this other one that this is one we don't talk about church. I had to wait till the kids went home or went downstairs to do this one, but sex. That's actually a compartment that we spend a lot of time thinking about. Do you realize that this is the top 3 reasons for divorce? Just to throw that out there. Anyway, let's move on, okay? And another one, it kind of goes along, but it's totally different. Fun, right? Entertainment, exciting things that are happening in our life, fun, right? And then there's this one category that we'd really like to get rid of. This category that it's very challenging. And in our American society, we do everything we can to get rid of this one category, this one compartment, and it's discomfort. I want to ask you how many of you are uncomfortable today. But here's what I find, is I find that we spend a lot of time in our compartments trying to work through different things and a lot of energy in different ways to try to work out what's going on in our lives here. And as we do, we struggle with different parts. You know, you look at the discomfort thing and you say, well, there's things that kind of slide into this discomfort category and such. And here's the problem. We're confused about direction. We're confused about what our life should look like. We're confused about different things. For example, this compartment of spouse. In the past couple of weeks, from inside and outside of this ministry, I've listened to several couples that have said to me straight out, they've been married more than 10 years, each of them. They said, I just don't even know. I'm so confused about our marriage. Why did we get married in the first place? I'm like, oh, I'm on vacation, man. I can't answer that question for you. I'm sorry you're so confused, you know. And maybe you've asked that question, that confusion that comes in. Or you look at career, and within that would be teens and college kids where you're going to school and you're saying, okay, what is my school or career path? And I'm so confused. I met with some teenage or college-age kids that are like, man, I'm doing the studies, but I don't even know why sometimes. And am I going to get a job in this? And these different things that happen, and there's confusion about that, and you can go all the way through each one, and your friends, do I have friends? Don't I have friends? They're not commenting on the things on Facebook. I don't think they call me as much. I got them a present. They didn't get me a present. And all these other things that kind of go into our mind, and it's confusing. What do I do with, and how do I handle all of these things? And here's what I'm saying. I believe we need clarity. We need clarity. How do we handle our career? How do we handle fun, church, kids, health, all of these things? How do we handle that in a right way? Because here's the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter is this, and it's up on your screen. The reason we struggle with clarity, is because things don't go the way we expect. We don't think about health as an issue until our health is an issue. We're not confused about our marriage until our marriage is an issue. We're not confused and struggling with clarity on our friends or our career until things don't go the way we planned. And then confusion comes in and we're like, wow, what's going on here? I don't know what to do with this anymore. It didn't go the way I expected. Clarity is necessary. If there's one person in the Bible, and there's plenty, but there's one specific person that I want to point out here that had a very clear perspective of life, but I'll tell you what, his life did not go the way he expected or planned. It's this man, John, the Apostle John. Different than John the Baptist. We'll get to him next week, but John the Apostle. Let me give you a little history about him. He's the writer of this book, John. the Gospel of John. He's also the author of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John and Revelations. And so in that, here's a brief history about him. He was chosen to be a disciple alongside of his brother James, who were called sons of thunder. Their mother was Salome, who many believe she was a disciple or follower of John the Baptist. And so there was a kind of religious heritage, if you will, or a following of God heritage in their family. He became best friends with Jesus. He refers to himself in his own writings, not as John, but he refers to himself as the one whom Jesus loved. Now listen, let's be honest. If you're writing about Jesus, which way would you like to refer to yourself? As John or the one that Jesus loved? I'm going with one that Jesus loved, okay? And so that's what he does. He writes all about that. Best friends with Jesus, top 3. He's with Jesus at the most significant and intimate times throughout his ministry. But here's what happens 3 years later as they're developing this relationship. He is there at the foot of the cross as Jesus died. Things did not go the way he expected. Well, Jesus then raises from the dead, right? And that's what we're all about. That's the gospel right there, that Jesus raised from the dead. And after that, he comes to his disciples and he commissions them. He sends them out and says, listen, what I've done with you now is I've given you the keys. Here's the gospel. Here's why I've come. Now you understand. So go tell others about me. So John does. And the other disciples. And as John goes out and does this, it's the awesomest thing. You get into a couple of weeks of this, and he finds himself in this luxurious and glamorous prison. There was nothing glamorous about this prison. You see, things did not go the way he expected. He would have thought, hey, this is going to be great. I believed in Jesus. Others will believe in Jesus. It makes total sense. He raised from the dead. We watched him. Who else has done that? I mean, come on, believe in Jesus. I know this religion thing's cool over here, but that's not it. Jesus is it. And he finds himself in prison, beaten. And then you trail this out a few months later. As he continues, he gets out of prison, and they threaten him in different things. And so there was a short while later, Herod was cleaning up the kingdom of these new Christians. The little Christ is what they call them, Christ followers. And as he was doing some cleanup work, he took James, the brother of John, and put a sword through him. If your brother just died, you know, your sons of thunder. You guys are like 2 peas in a pod. You're known everywhere as being together. And now his brother's dead. Would you struggle with clarity? The reason we struggle with clarity is because things don't go the way we expect. And here's what's going on with John. Things are not going the way he expects even. His brother is now dead. Jesus is gone. You go down further, and what happens over the next several years is all of the other apostles, every single apostle, is martyred, which is to be killed for your faith, except for him. He outlives everyone, but not unscathed, if you will, because as you look at how things went, Domitian was trying to get rid of Christians in Asia, and as he was doing that, he took John and he decided to do this really cool thing. He wanted some supper, so he took John and threw him in a boiling vat of oil. Yeah, bad day. He survived that. According to Tertullian, he survives this, and he goes off and he takes him and sends him to the Isle of Patmos to an imprisonment kind of camp, a camp of slavery. Did life turn out the way John thought it would turn out? All of his friends are dead. His brother's dead. He has essentially no friends in life. He doesn't have what he thinks would be great. His compartments, in a sense, they're destroyed. And while he was there, God shows up and gives him this vision of revelations, and most historians then would agree that they finally let him go, and at some point he ended up back in Ephesus. And they're not sure when he wrote the different books that he wrote. There's a lot of different perspectives on that, but it doesn't really matter. But I would expect, if he's anything like you and me, when you go through pain and suffering and hardship, you, at the end of that, are hardened and jaded. I mean, a lot of people like that. Most people turn away from God because of the pain they've been through. They suffered some sort of a loss in their past, and they say, there's no God, because God would never allow this to happen if there was truly a God. John, the apostle, could say that. He experienced pain at levels that I couldn't even comprehend. Yet, in his writings, he gives us clarity about Jesus and clarity about life. He wrote 5 books in the New Testament about Jesus, and he keyed in on a few unique themes and repeated them over and over and over for us to get the point. You understand what that is, right? Last week, I went and saw the Star Wars movie, The Rise of Skywalker. Yeah. Okay, how many have seen that? Okay, awesome. I won't ask for who likes it, who doesn't like it. I was entertained by it, but it kind of lacked a little bit of Star Wars thought. But anyway, we'll just move on from that. But I was entertained, so I didn't waste my money. Anyway, but within Star Wars, there's this one thing that they repeated over and over and over and over again from the very first one, which was called what? The New Hope or something? I don't know. So way back when Luke Skywalker was just coming into the Force, and you have Yoda and all this stuff. And here's the thing that we really didn't hear anything about until that point. They said, may the what? Force be... Like, you all know this. And they said this over and over. The Force is this. Oh, he's one with the Force, or she's one with the Force, and the Force will this, and then you get the Force and all this other stuff. And let's have the Force for lunch, and I don't know. And the Force was part of everything with Star Wars, all the way through Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and all the way through. The Force was a main theme throughout everything. And so if you're watching Star Wars, you'd stop and say, what is this Force thing that they're talking about? Try to explain that to a 10-year-old. I don't know. It's kind of, I just leave that alone. And so in the same kind of way, writers often do this, where they key in on a few things that as you're reading through what they write, you'd have to listen in and say, whoa, they said that again. They're saying there must be something significant about what they're saying. And so as I read through John's writings, here's some of the main themes that he talks about repeatedly. The one is truth or true, mentioned over 45 times in his writings. Now, you would look and say, well, what's the big deal about that? That's more than every other writer in the Bible. More than every other time in the Old Testament. Paul doesn't even come close to that in all of his writings, which is fascinating. So 45 times he writes about this one word, true or truth. So you'd have to say there's something significant about what he's saying about true or truth. Do we need clarity on truth today? Everyone says, I know what the truth is, but then they change it 3 years later. Well, the truth is this now. The truth is milk's not good for you. The truth is milk is good for you. The truth is 2% milk's good for you. The truth is 2% is not good. And you have this truth that's kind of going like this all of the time in our culture. And here was what John is keying in on. Truth is to be found. Another one that he talks about, that he mentions about 75 times, is the word world, cosmos, the word world, which is interesting that he's really one of the only writers that mentions world in the senses that he does. And it's a newer term to that day as he highlights this word. We're really talking about the society and the cosmos around there. Another one is love. He's really known as an author all about love. Why? Because he mentions love over 80 times in his writings. Over 80 times. That's significant. Paul comes close, as he writes in 1 Corinthians 13, is known as the chapter of love. But I would say that 1 John chapter 4 is another parallel kind of chapter on love as well. Tremendous thoughts that he has about love. And then the last one is interesting because this is 120 times that it's mentioned in his writings. is the word believe. The word believe. Way more than anyone else. So when you look at these 4 words that are highlighted over and over and over, much like you'd look at Star Wars and the Force is with you, you would look at this and you'd have to stop and say, why is he writing about believe and love and truth? Why is he writing about these things? It keeps coming up over and over and over again. Is there something he wants us to hear in these words? And so we're going to look at that over the next few weeks. He writes about Jesus like no one else. And wouldn't he? He's best friends with him. He writes about Jesus in a way that even James, the brother of Jesus, does not write about him, which is really fascinating to me. He writes a very close and intimate letter about Jesus. Now, there's some very awesome things about what he's writing. We're going to dive into certain things here because I want for you to have clarity in life. I want for you to have clarity with this, with your kids, church, career, sex, fun, discomfort, health. I want there to be clarity in all of our lives in these things. And here's what happens. God promises to give us clarity. It says that he is not the author of confusion. But what he does is he brings truth to us so we have a clear perspective of why did this happen. And in many cases, we can understand what he's doing. Why? What should we do about that? Why am I here? The primary questions that we have in our life, philosophical questions. He answers these questions, and John dives into them as well. So the key verse in John is John 20:31. John 20:31. I put it up on the screen. You're welcome to go to your Bible and read this with me as well. But this is the key verse. If you're to kind of boil all of the book of John into one verse, it would be this one verse. It says, but these are written. The things that I'm writing for you. There's so much more I could write is what verse 30 says. There's so many other things I could talk about. But these things that I'm writing to you, they're written so that you may, here's that key word, believe. You may believe what? That Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. And by believing, you may have life in his name. So time out. If you're confused about Jesus, if you need clarity about Jesus, John wants to give that to you today. He wants to highlight that in all that he's writing. Here's his whole purpose, so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and by believing, you may have life in his name. They're written that you might believe. He wrote out of clarity to give us clarity. He didn't want us to be skeptical or confused or struggling with, I don't know what to do, and I don't know who Jesus is, and why was he here? Was he just a famous person? Was he just a martyr? Was he just a hero? No, he's writing to give us clarity. He is a person with clarity. He hung out with Jesus. He was best friends with him, and he's giving us the clarity that we need. It says then that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. He believed in Jesus. He was with Jesus as his best friend, and the reality is he looked at Jesus, his best friend, the one that he hung out with, went through life with. He referred to him as the Son of God. And you'll see in a little bit, he's referring to him as God in the flesh. Listen, time out. What would it take for you to refer to your best friend as God? Think about it. The person you're sitting next to, look at them. Would you ever consider them as God? Some of you are laughing. No way. The devil maybe, but not God. Okay? No, time out. Don't say that. Right? But here's the reality. John, best friends with Jesus, is looking at his best buddy. After all the pain and suffering he went through, after all the things that he experienced, after all of that, he's writing about Jesus and saying, Jesus is God. And he's saying, I want for you to believe in him. So he chronicles the life, the events that would help to grow our belief. And here's what he says at the end, and that by believing you may have life in his name. You'll have life in his name. You see, our belief system affects everything because our belief system is developed by what we perceive gives us life. For example, let's go back to our compartments. Why do we get married? Some of you are like, I don't know. Yeah, you've been married a little bit. Okay. Why do we get married? Because the person that we're with way back when, or the person that we're looking forward to being with in the future, and hopefully it's still that way for those who've been, but you're looking at that one through these sparkly eyes, and there's like hearts coming out your head or whatever, and you're like, oh, they're the one, and I want to spend my life with them, because they give you this feeling of life. They give you this wow, I'm so excited to be with them. When they show up at the door, I'm like, my heart skips a beat. Okay, guys, we don't say that, but I'm just trying to help us out, okay? And so we have these things that happen that we're like, oh, I just love to be with them, and it gives me life. And this compartment here, the spouse, is one that I just look forward to. And maybe you're not married yet, or maybe you were married, and you'd love to be married again, maybe, or whatever. And you're like, yeah, I get it. Or I'm yearning for. And our belief system then is driven out of our experiences here, can be, in that our belief system says, okay, because I love, because I enjoy, because of the experience that I have here or wherever it might be, I believe that this gives me life. It makes me feel alive. And oftentimes our belief system then is driven by what most makes us feel alive. Think about it. When you look at all these different compartments, and these are just a few, you can put your own on here. When you look at each one, I would ask you to kind of chart out which one of these makes you feel most alive. Because we often will lean into the thing that makes us feel most alive. And our belief system is driven into and out of this thing that makes us feel most alive, that gives us life. And here's what John's saying: by believing in Jesus, you will have life. You will be made alive. It will be life-changing. It's like looking at these compartments, and Jesus is totally different then. But here's the issue. In our culture, I believe, and you tell me, in your mind, think this through a little bit, fact check through your own experience, I believe that really our belief system is dictated by our comforts. In that we feel most alive when we're most comfortable. And so our belief system is driven out of that. So here's what happens. Jesus, do you notice Jesus is not on here? There's an important reason for that, because Jesus is not another compartment in our life. Do you realize that? Jesus is not another compartment in our life. Jesus brings clarity to all of life's compartments. It's that when we look at all of these compartments, Jesus is not just a compartment. He's not just one of these. Jesus brings clarity to every single compartment. Why is that important? Because aren't we confused about this and this and this and this and this? The reason why we're confused about it is because now we're uncomfortable in it. Because life has turned in a way that was unexpected, and we feel uncomfortable because this is not going the way we wanted it to go. And here's the reality. When Jesus is the one that clarifies all of our compartments, we look to him first and we say, okay, this is uncomfortable, and I'm going to let you solve this. I'm looking for wisdom in how to deal with this. Because all of my compartments, they are flowing out of what Jesus is doing and what Jesus has done. When we do that, it is life-changing. Why do I believe this? John chapter 1. John chapter 1. So open your Bibles there with me if you haven't yet. John chapter 1. Do you realize that there is no place in our lives that God has not spoken? God has spoken about finances. God has spoken about spouses, friends, church, sex, fun, discomfort. God has spoken about all these compartments. In any compartment you throw at God, he has spoken about these. There's nothing that he has left for our imagination. Here's why I believe that Jesus brings clarity to all of life's compartments. And that would be something, listen, on Monday morning, I would encourage you to open that in your notes and look at that before you go into your day. Jesus brings clarity into all of life's compartments. So John chapter 1, here's where John starts speaking. He says, and this is different than the other Gospels for sure. It's fascinating as he writes this out. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now he's speaking, as you go down through, you'll see he's speaking clearly about Jesus Christ. Anytime he refers to the Word, he's speaking about Jesus. So he says, in the beginning was the Word. Notice his starting point. It wasn't with Mary and Joseph, the best friend of Jesus, the one that's hanging out with him, the one that went to McDonald's, if there was McDonald's, the one that went to different restaurants and hung out with him. He's saying, this one that I was hanging out with, this one that we did things together, this one existed prior to anyone being here. He existed in the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, he says. And he gives proximity. He says, and the Word was with God. We say, I went to church and I was with my friend, I was with my family, I was with my wife, it's that your proximity, your geographical location is you're right next to the person that you're with. In the same way, he's saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. It wasn't that he was in a universe far, far away. He was with God. Then you go a step further, and he says this, and the Word was God. He's saying that Jesus eternally existed. We cannot say this about ourselves because nobody here is older than 100. You might look older than 100, but you're not, right? But when Jesus eternally existed forever. He was in the beginning. He was with God. And he is God. He's not just a prophet. He's not just a famous person. He's not an angel, and he's not a special superhero. John, the best friend of Jesus, is making these statements. John, the one that walked through life with him, he saw him when things were not going so well. He saw him when twists and turns came into their life, and it was a bad day, and you've had a bad day where you said the wrong thing, you did the wrong thing, you've been there, right? He watched Jesus as Jesus never did the wrong thing because Jesus is fully God. So John, best friends of Jesus, is chronicling this. And he says this next verse, he was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him. And without him was not anything made that was made. So here he's saying he is the beginner. He is the one that created. He is the one that made all this happen. The reason there's an oak tree outside, the reason there's people inside, the reason why we have these planets and the stars and the sun and all this is because Jesus made them. That's what John's saying. The best friend of Jesus, the one that hung out with Jesus and went out and did all kinds of things with him, the one that saw him flesh on flesh, he saw him. And here's what he's saying. This one, my best buddy, created even me. He eternally existed, and he created all things. And then he says, in him was life. In him was life, and life was the light of men. The light shines in darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So he brings things to life, kind of like Frankenstein, right? I almost said frankincense because it's Christmas time. But Frankenstein, where he brings them to life. Here's what John's saying. He is the author of life. He brings things to life. He is the one that understands life. We don't. Can you guarantee that you have another breath in you? No. You could just stop breathing right now. Jesus is the author of life. He is the giver of life. In him is life, and life was the light of men. The light shines in darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. In him is light. He is shining. His light is in every dark area, and we need his light. And here's what light does. When I'm driving at nighttime and I'm going through the back roads of wherever, like on a white horse bike, it's not so bad. You can leave your lights off and you can drive at nighttime, and it's no big deal. There's enough lights around, ambient light. I wouldn't suggest that, but you could do that, right? But when you go out down to where there's no lights and it's pitch black out, you need the light to tell you which way to go. So you don't run into the tree over here, so that you stay on the road. And here's what John's saying about Jesus, his best friend. He's the light. If you need clarity in any part of your life, he's the one that brings light. And it's not a tiny light that you have on your cell phone that gives you just a little bit, but not enough to go do what you really need to. He gives you the light to understand life and to walk forward in it. That's the best friend of Jesus talking. It's awesome. In him is light, and he shines on every dark area. Do you need clarity? Because this is what God is intending, or what Jesus is all about. He's here to give us clarity in every part of life. It's that he's not another compartment in our life. He brings clarity to all of life's compartments. If you believe this, then here's what happens. Jesus informs your compartments. Let me illustrate. If Jesus informs this compartment, I'm just going to pick on a spouse because it's fun. If Jesus informs your compartment of spouse, let's say you're married for 5 years. Hardest time of marriage is 5 years, and then 25 is what I hear. So here at 5 years, you've got a couple kids running around or whatever, a child running around. You feel like so distant from each other. Things aren't going so well, and you're not sure how you're going to make it, and you feel like they don't care about you, and all these things have been said, and all the hurt's been done and things. How is it that you gain clarity in that confusing time? You run to Jesus and you say, Jesus, inform me as to what I should be doing in this. Inform me as to how this works. This person that I couldn't get my eyes off of, this person that I couldn't wait to get married to, this person I would love to get away from. They're driving me up a wall. So Jesus, I'm just telling you the truth. This is how it is. When Jesus brings clarity to your compartments, what happens is you run to him, you gain information and study from what he's revealed to us. He's revealed to us things in God's word through different authors, and he's revealed to us himself through the creation, through things all around us. So you run to this and you say, bring clarity as to how to deal with this. And here's how you get clarity. You get into that time where things are horrible in your marriage, maybe. And as you're going through that, you say, Jesus, give me clarity. And he says, oh, by the way, I know what it is to be abused. I know what it is to go through a hard time. I know what it is to have people treat me unkindly, because Jesus was in the flesh walking through this life. And it says later on, he came to his own family, and his own family rejected him. The person that wrote the book of James in the Bible rejected him up until Jesus died and rose again. And it was at that point that he finally said, wow, he really is God in the flesh. But up until that point, they were not friends. There was a rejection that happened in his home and in the community that he lived in. He understands rejection. He understands pain. He understands hurt. He says, here's how I walked through it. I got to the point of being crucified. Why? So that I could pay for the sins of the world. And while I was on the cross, I'm hanging there on the cross, and I look to my Father, and I say, Father, send lightning down and kill them all. No. Father, I'm in extreme pain. No, it's Father, forgive them. They don't understand what they're doing. Does he understand pain? Does he understand discomfort? See, here's what we do. We have this idea that when our spouse is on our last note, let's move over to friends. When our friend is really disappointing us and not doing what we want, they didn't get the right thing for Christmas or whatever it was, and they said the wrong things, and you heard this about what they did, and you have this going on, and they have now made your life uncomfortable. Here's what we do. You were in the friend category over here, and now I'm moving you to the discomfort category, and you're staying here, and here's what we want to do with the discomfort category. We do everything we can to eliminate it. Right? We don't want pain to sit around in our life. How's your week going? Oh man, it's been great. My back's been killing me all week long. Huh? I'll tell you what, I'm going through the best season of my marriage. Really? You guys getting along? No, she hates me. What? And here's what we do. When things don't go well in any one of these, we take it and say, yeah, you get to lose. This category is going away, and you're going into the discomfort pile, and the discomfort pile gets discarded. I am so glad that Jesus did not discard me, because I have made him feel uncomfortable time and time and time again. And I've disappointed him time and time and time again. Haven't you? This last week, I was sick for a few days. And my son, 10-year-old son, says to me, Dad, I don't like it that you're sick. And he was sick too and had some stomach pain and really was struggling, you understand that. And he said, Dad, I don't like it when you're sick. And he said this that was amazing. He said, Dad, you don't deserve to be sick. Which I laughed at and said, you have no idea. Just ask your mother. No, I didn't. But here's the reality. We think we don't deserve bad things. Jesus didn't deserve bad things. Jesus didn't deserve discomfort. And while in the most uncomfortable place on the planet, being rejected by his family, being rejected by his friends, being abandoned by God in that moment, he's crying out and saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. See, when we allow Jesus to be the one in charge of all of our compartments, instead of putting him into a compartment, listen, when we put him into a compartment, what we're saying is, I'm God and you stay over here. I think the church is very guilty of that today. Modern Christianity is very guilty of that today. That we say, Jesus, you have your place, but you don't have me. When we allow him to have all of our compartments, it changes everything. You take a horrible situation and you say, I'm going to keep loving you. Why? Because Jesus loved me. How could I not love you? Changes our finances, changes every single aspect of our life. And my question this morning, as we kind of bring it to a close, see, the result is clarity, right? And my question is, how much are you allowing Jesus to be in charge of your compartments? Because I'm going to guess that most of us struggle by putting Jesus into the compartment over here. It's kind of like we put him in the church compartment. He's not in the church compartment. He's called us to be the church. And I think that we often put him into the church or put him into a compartment that isolates him over here. And we say, don't touch me. Who I'm choosing for my spouse, don't touch that. Because listen, this is all on me. Jesus, you keep in your compartment. Don't tell me how to do my career. Listen, I want this career and I don't care what you have to say about that. And then 10 years later, you're going to bless me, right? And don't tell me about my friends. Don't tell me about church and what I should be doing at church. And don't tell me about what I can or can't do with fun. Jesus, you stay in your compartment, is what we often want to say. And I would suggest that if we believe in Jesus in the way that John's talking about, that he's giving us true life, that we would turn things around on a daily basis and say, Jesus, you own all my compartments. So give me clarity with what to do here, 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 and every other compartment. But warning, here's the asterisk and the fine print. In order to do something about it, it will take courage to follow him. And next week, we're going to talk about that. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that you would help us to see clearly who you are in every compartment of our life. Lord, I pray that you'd open up our eyes to where we've kind of minimized you, minimized your influence, and minimized your control. And Lord, I pray that we just let you into every single compartment. Thank you, God, for your friend John that wrote these things down. Thank you for his faithfulness to you throughout his life. Regardless of what he went through, he stayed faithful to you. So God, thank you for his testimony. Thank you for what he's written down. Lord, I pray that as we go, that we would apply these things out each and every day this week. And we give you the praise through it. Jesus, I pray. Amen.